Good evening. Welcome to tonight's shir. Tonight is Sunday of Parshas Tazria. Advance warning or notice: next Sunday evening, I won't be able to do the shir. Baruch Hashem, we're making chasana this week, and that will be during Sheva Brachas, so I won't be able to do the shir on time. And we'll see what happens after that between then and Pesach. But meanwhile, let's get to what we have for tonight. Lots of interesting things. So, first of all, a woman was converted, and now it's a good few years later, and she has a child this child was unborn at the time. She was pregnant with this child at the time when she converted. The dilemma was there is a concept of the mother toveling, the mother immersing, and that being valid for the child. Usually that would have been documented every time there's a gerus, there's a conversion, there would be a document, a certificate, and there was no mention of this. So that was a concern. Is there, if a pregnant woman went through conversion, went through Giyur, and it wasn't known that she was pregnant, does the conversion work for the child? So it's actually not terribly irrelevant but it's a fascinating topic, actually. So here we have on the Shulchan Aruch, this is in the Dinim of Gerus, in Yeridere Shlamaches, tells us, Nochris shenis gairo, a non-Jewish woman who converted, Vehimu Beres, and she is actually pregnant. Beno ein tzorich tevila. The baby, who hasn't been born yet, does not need to be immersed separately. And there's a discussion in the Gemara, why is the mother not a chatzitza? If the child needs to be toveled, why is the mother's body? And the Gemara answers, this is the way the child grows inside a mother's body, therefore it's not a chatzitza, etc. Okay. So we know that if there was a conscious conversion for the child, so then the mother's immersion counts for the child. So now we look on the margin of the Shulchan Aruch, we've got the Dogel Mervava. These are short comments by the one Reb Cheskel Landau, otherwise known as the Noida B'Yehuda. So he writes the following: Im yodu ha-bezdin b'shas tvila. If the Bezdin were aware at the time of Tevila, shehimu bears that she's pregnant, hadin pasha, there's an obvious, straightforward halacha that the conversion, the immersion of the mother is valid for the baby. Avolim lo yodu ha-bezdin shehimu bears. If the Bezdin were unaware, so he tells us very briefly, Yeshli bozeh arichus devarim. I have a lot of discussion about this. Natalia ba'ash l'raver ve'ri depends on great oak trees. In other words, great authorities, and there's different opinions. And he says, I'm not going to discuss it at length over here. But here the Noda B'Yehuda has told us that if the Bezdin are unaware that the woman was pregnant, there is a question as to the validity of the gear, of the conversion for the baby. So this came up this past week as a practical question. Does that child 10 years, 15 years later, 20 years later, does that child need to go through a conversion or not, the chumrah, etc.? So I have a volume at home called Brissi Yitzchok, and it's dedicated to the topic of Gerus, written by Rabbi Yitzchak Brandt from Aix-les-Bains, who I've met several times, and he addresses this point. He quotes from Chazon Ish, who discusses this. Now, there is a concept, ubor yerech imoy, that the fetus is like a limb of the mother. And so if you take that, this is debated in the Gemara. If you say uber yerech imoy, which means like when a person is megayer So his hand and his foot also become Jewish. So the baby is part of the mother, and therefore the baby is also Jewish. Uber Yerach Imoy. This is not such a straightforward thing, as I say. It's debated whether we say Uber Yerach Imoy. So one fascinating spin-off, if that's the right word. There is a halacha, it says in the Torah, that a Mitzri, if an Egyptian person was Megaya, so then Dor Shlishi Yovel Lohem B'Kahal Hashem. Third generation may join into Kahal Hashem. So a Mitzri can convert, but the first, second generation may not marry into regular Jewish families. Third generation is allowed to. So this woman who converted and she's carrying a baby, if she was a Mitzris, if she's an Egyptian, the baby which she gives birth to, is he Dor Sheni or Dor Rishon? Is he a first generation Ger or a second generation? And it looks like in the Gemara, certainly there are views in the Halacha, that this baby is considered second generation, which means that his children will be able, his or her children will be allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael. Now, if you say that the Uber Yerech Imoy, that the baby is an indigenous part of the mother, so then why is it the baby second generation? It is part of the mother who was Megai. It says first generation. We have also in Gemara, it talks about if a pregnant cow gored another animal, and it's the first or second time, it's called a shertam, and the limitations in that case are one of the limitations are that it's only mishalem migufoy, that the owner, his liability is only if there is value in the animal which caused the damage. But if the animal doesn't have value, doesn't have enough value, let's say the damage was 300 zuz, and the animal is only worth 200 zuz. So then the liability is, well, okay, let's say the animal is less than half the damage. So then the owner doesn't have to pay any more. So that's the concept of chatzinezek migufoy. Now, what happens if a pregnant cow caused damage willfully, knowingly, so to speak, and then it gave birth? Can the victim who sustained the damage, can he collect payment not only from the mother but also from the baby? To say as if the baby was part of. So the Gemara says yes. When the animal gored, when the animal caused the damage, the baby was kind of having part of the fun. And also, there's other situations where you say that the baby is part of. When the mother is motivated, the baby is also part of that motive. So, let's try to come to a kind of conclusion here. It does follow that even if you say uber lav yerech imoy, which seems to be quite a strong spot, it's not mamash a part of the mother, but it still follows that when the mother has a motive to become to convert, conversion is knowingly and willingly, so that willingly will also include the child. So the child, the unborn fetus, was also part of the willingly becoming a ger. So that's the argument to say that even that the baby is included with the mother's gerus, even though it's not a yerechim, it's not an indigenous part of the mother, but it is kind of carried along with the mother's motive. Comes along, however, according to the Rambam, when there's a gerus of a, so there's a bezdin who would be present at the immersion. According to the Rambam, that's imperative in HaTorah, that there has to be, the immersion has to be in front of three. Now, if the Dayonim were not aware that there's a baby involved, so then the immersion of the baby was not in the presence of Dayanim. That is the way he explains the dilemma of the Noda Behuda. If the Dayanim did not know that the woman is pregnant, is the immersion, is the tefillah of the baby, which they don't know about, is it valid? Because they didn't see it happening. Before I go further, I just want to clarify something, that when tefillah of a female takes place for a gerus, so the Bezdin will they will use a kind of a tent, like a cloth, that the woman will be covered by her neck, and so her body won't be visible to the Dayanim, and that will be kind of floating on the surface, and they will only see as her head goes under the water. Okay, let's move on. Let's go on to the next question. Okay, here's also a marriage-related question, and that is the following: that a Kohen has got certain restrictions who is allowed to marry, who is not allowed to marry. So we know that a Kohen must not marry a divorcee, and if a Kohen does marry a divorcee, so then the children born from that union are called chalolim. They are kind of, but I don't know, I'm not going to think of a word, but they are somehow not, and a Kohen mustn't marry a chalola. So that's, and also a Kohen mustn't marry a Zoina, Isha Grusha, Zoina Vachalola, Lo Yikach. We have a case of a non-Jewish man who had a child from a Jewish woman. So that child, we know that if in case of a mixed marriage or mixed, etc., so the identity, the status of the child goes according to the mother. So if it's a Jewish mother, the child is Jewish. Here we're not talking about whether the child is Jewish. We're talking about, yes, the child is Jewish. Is the child suitable for a kahuna? So here we have a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It's a couple of times in Even Ezer. If a goy has relations with a Jewish daughter, and she gave birth to a daughter, oisa habas peguma lekahuna. So a Jewish woman whose father is not Jewish, she is not suitable for a kohen. Yeah. So again, if you have a woman whose mother is Jewish, fine woman, but her father is not Jewish, was not Jewish, is not Jewish, then she is not eligible for a kohen. Now, the halacha here is that if they did get married, they do not have to divorce. The question here in our case is we're going a generation later. Again, a Jewish woman whose father is not Jewish. She got married to a kohen, and now she has a daughter. Can a kohen marry that daughter? So what we've seen in Shulchan Aruch, that there's a pagam, there's a blemish. She should not have married this kohen. Does that objection carry on to the next generation? That's really our question. And I must say, it's not really spelt out clearly in poskim, in earlier poskim. In the case that a man, if a kohen married this girl whose father isn't Jewish, so are they allowed to remain married? So here we see here that al kein b'di'evet ein moitziin im nises lekohen. They do not have to divorce. So they are allowed to get married. What's happened in the last half a century or more, that you have but most notably Rav Sholem Massas, who was the Rav the chief rabbi of Morocco. Later he moves to Eretz Yisrael and becomes the Rav Roshi of Yerushalayim, the Sephardic Rav Roshi of Yerushalayim for a period. And he took the view that if you have a kohen who's already in a relationship, in an active relationship with a girl whose father, with a Jewish girl whose father is not Jewish, then he considers that like a b'diavad, and he allows the marriage to happen. So again, you have here a Jewish girl whose father isn't Jewish. She comes along to the Rabbanut HaRashit, she comes to a local rabbi, and she says, I've got a relationship with my boyfriend for the last, I don't know how many years, whatever. His name is, he's a Kohen. Will you marry us? And Rav Masas took the view that that's called a b'diavad, and they're allowed to, and we're allowed to officiate that marriage because they are already in union. Certainly, if you've got a civil marriage, he will say it's already it's a b'diavad situation. It's done already, and it would allow you to make the now. They don't address whether this goes on to over to the next generation, but contemporary poskim say, listen, if you are allowing them to stay married, and if you're going to say the next generation are going to have a pagam likahuna, are going to be unsuitable for kohanim, you're perpetuating the problem. Why are you allowing them to stay married? And therefore, they take the view, as I say, very much contemporary poskim, take the view that the pagam does not go over to the next generation. So therefore, the question which was asked to me this past week, again, there was a kohen who had married a Jewish woman whose father was not Jewish. Now their daughter wants to get married to a Kohen, and the halacha would be that they are allowed to get married. Let's move on to the next question. Interesting question. Okay, so one of our regular listeners, sent me the following ha'ara, which I want to share with you. There is an issue of liquids which were left overnight in metal. And so here you can see this is from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, based upon a Gemara, that if you have liquids, you should not drink liquids which have been left overnight in metal or kleiness or whatever that is. So liquids which are left overnight in a metal thing, you shouldn't drink. Then the Alter Rebbe adds in brackets, how much more so water itself, never mind other drinks, if certainly water, which is left overnight in metal kalim, you shouldn't drink it. Now this is a chiddush of the Alter Rebbe, and we've discussed a few times the brackets in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch are often chidushim of his, which are not documented in earlier sources. The Alter Rebbe says that water left overnight in kalimatches is a problem. Now, it happens to be that the water in my kettle was overnight in the pipes in my house, and the pipes in my house are metal, whether they're copper or other, and largely the water in our taps, in our sinks, has been overnight inside a metal pipe. And there was Reb David Shapiro, a brilliant Goan in Yerushalayim, in about 60, 70 years ago, and he saw this piece of the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch, a big chiddush, and he says that's huge. You're saying that we have a problem with all our water in the water supply. The olden times people would just go with buckets to the well, but now that we are sophisticated, we've got a water supply. Well, all our water supply is Linas Laila. So he wrote to the Rebbe about this. So the Rebbe writes back to him that in order to justify the Minig Yerushalayim that they're not worried about it, is possibly that the concept of mayim which are left over in a keli container, that means a keli which is portable. When we talk about keli, normally we talk about a portable item, whereas if it's a keli which is plumbed into the building, connected to the building, so then it may, for some aspects, it loses the status of keli. So now, then he says, the Rebbe says a rule, which I think I've shared with you in the past. But when we come to all of these ruach ra, these kind of spiritual things, which have got to do with evil spirits, etc., as we don't expand because we don't understand the svaras here, and therefore we don't take it beyond the totally obvious. We'll only be machmir as where it's written clearly. So when we have Maim Shalonu B'chli Matches, B'chli, okay, this is not a keli. A pipe is not a keli. If you're going to start saying for mikveh, perhaps it is a keli, it doesn't matter. It is in some aspects, it's not a keli. That's enough to take off the concern of water left over in metalware. But then the Rebbe goes further. The MSA, I don't know whether you need to go to all of these excuses, explanations. Al machbarto, the preferred and clearest answer is kiven de doshu bo rabim. When we got something that says in the Gemara is dangerous, it's dangerous. But then you see that it's largely ignored. People have trampled over it. Many people have trampled over this thing, which means that it's widespread that people don't take heed of the caution of the Gemara. So then we have Shoim Epsoim Hashem, that Hashem protects the fools. So although the Gemara says this is dangerous, but when it's been widespread behavior that people don't worry about it, so don't worry about it. And in the Hemshech of the letter, the Rebbe refers to the Tzemach Tzedek, who says even those who are knowledgeable of the Gemara, they are also allowed to rely on Shoim Epsoim Hashem, that Hashem protects the fools, because it's become widespread that people are not worried about it. So that we've got many things in the Gemara, it says it's dangerous. When it's widespread, that people don't worry about it, then that's itself ahead. So again, why is there not a problem with the water in the tap? Well, you could say it's not a problem because it's mechubar karka. Maybe you could say shoim Hashem. Having said that, now let's come now to drinks in cans. So it's mine shalom b'chili drinks which are left overnight in kli. So some people, I know that the late Rav Malo was particular about this, that he would have, when he was traveling, he wouldn't have Coke from a can, only from a bottle. Okay. Although I don't know what happened in the factory before it got into the bottle, but never mind. Now, since someone sends me the following experiment, which someone made, he takes a can and rubs off the paintwork, then it puts it into a bowl of some chemical. And forgive me, I don't remember the name of the chemical, but it eats away the aluminum, or aluminium in English, and then you're left with, as you can see, you got left the plastic liner inside. Basically saying that every drink in a can, or there's a standard practice, that there's a plastic bag which is lining the can. So therefore, you don't have to worry of Maim Shalona B'chli Matches, of the drink being in metal. Actually, the drink was inside the plastic, which was inside the metal can. So therefore, that problem goes away totally. Rabbi Elu told me this morning that actually he had, going back more than 50 years ago, 60 years ago, he had this kind of conversation with Rabbi Zalman Shimon Dvorkin. And so one of his colleagues had said that the plastic, the cans are lined with plastic, and Rabbi Zalman Shimon took it on board, that it's not a problem because it's lined with plastic. Yes, so yes, Rav Aryeh is pointing about the Shabbos urn. According to the first approach, mechubar lekarka, unless you're going to start, there would be a problem, and then you start going to differentiating: is it plugged in to electricity or is it? I don't think it makes any difference. I don't think the wire would make it mechubar lekarka. Don't have to go there. I just feel if the Rebbe says it's safe because of Shoim Psoim Hashem, that's good enough for me, and I don't worry about it. Okay, let's go on to the next point which we have. Another point here. Someone's asking. Water left in kettles, hot water urn is okay. Yes, the answer is okay. As we say, the Rebbe says Shoim Psoim Hashem, and you go into most Yiddish homes, they have for Shabbos they have an urn, and Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, we're hale and hearty. Let's move on. What's number 4? Oh, okay. So now, interesting how the two things are connected. So someone asks me, in their Chabad house, they have a large crock pot. One of the wonderful things which happen in Chabad houses is one thing is they daven Shachris late, which means that it's attractive to some people. And the next thing is they serve a child. And you know how many people are protected from so many hours of Chil Shabbos? because downing starts late, and then there's a nice geschmack lunch until until you turn around, most of the day is gone, and Baruch Hashem, they've saved them from Chilul Shabbos, and Bez Hashem warmed them up to Yiddishkeit, gewaldig. So these cholents, so they've got a crock pot for the cholent. So the way crock pots work mostly nowadays is that you got an insert, a removable, you've got a metal housing, and then you've got a ceramic insert. And then, in order to save the effort of scraping the pot clean at the end of Shabbos, so that apparently there's some kind of plastic liner that you put inside, and so the cholent is actually sitting in a plastic liner, and the liner is sitting in the ceramic, and the ceramic is in the metal, and it works out. It's geschmack. Question which he asked first of all was, does the ceramic pot need to be toveled? Because after all, the cholent isn't even touching it. It's always in the plastic. So really this brings us to a question. What about a baking tin? Most of us, present company, myself excluded, when you bake cookies, biscuits, you'd often use a grease-proof sheet of paper, and then you put that in the tin, and that baking tin, okay, doesn't touch the dough. So do you have to tovel the baking tin, which is always used with greaseproof paper? Another variation of this is those who had the good fortune to be in Eretz HaKodesh, Tibbana v'Zikonin. So milk comes in bags, and then the milk in bags is placed in a jug, and then you cut at the corner of the bag, and that's how you pour out your milk. At least that's how it was when I was in yeshiva. So now, if that jug was not plastic, but it was a metal jug, would it need to be toveled? And so the contemporary poskim take the view that the jug with the milk does not need to be toveled, because the bag of the milk is quite durable, and therefore it's one keli holding another keli. So the keli holding the other keli does not need to be toveled. By contrast, the baking tin, which has got cookies, so the sheet of greaseproof paper is so flimsy, it doesn't really count as a keli. It's a lining, but it's not a keli. And therefore, the baking tins, where you bake biscuits on sheets of greaseproof paper, those baking tins do need to be toveled. So there's that distinction. Now, I must tell you, before I go further, that really ceramic does not need to be toveled. The mitzvah of tevilah applies to metal, and it applies midrabanan to glass. It doesn't apply to wood, doesn't apply to bone, and doesn't apply to ceramic. We generally do tovel we buy new bowls, etc., because of the glazing, and the assumption or the concern, perhaps the glazing is also considered a keli, and therefore you have to tovel. But definitely no bracha when you're toveling ceramic stuff, china, etc. Definitely no bracha, because it's not clear that you have it, that you have to tovel it. All right, let's leave that aside. We're coming back to the question: does the lining exempt the main container from being toveled? And the answer is no. Like I said, with the baking tin, the fact that it's used with a lining does not exempt the baking tin itself to be toveled. Right. That was one question. Does it need to tovel the slow cooker if it's only using with a bag? And the answer is, in principle, yes. If it was metal, etc. Then comes the next question. What about, there's a concept called hatmona, and I think it's worth discussing a little bit more carefully about this. Insulating hot food for Shabbos. So there's two levels of insulation. One is bedava she'enoi moisef hevel. It's just retaining the temperature. It's not intensifying the temperature. So there are fine families even to this very day who just before Shabbos will take this soup, the Shabbos soup, off the fire, off the stove, and put it in a box. They will wrap it around with some quilts, and it stays boiling hot. Served to a couple 2 hours later, it's still boiling hot. That's hatmona bedova she'enoi mosef helo. It's not intensifying, and that's permitted before Shabbos. You mustn't do it on Shabbos, but you're allowed to do so for before Shabbos. Then you've got hatmona bedova hamoisef hevel, to insulate in a manner that it is intensifying. The heat is in, there's continual renewed heat coming this way. Without going into the various other examples, but there is a simple situation. Let's say if you had a pot of soup and you wanted to get it mamish very, very hot because there's someone in your house who really likes their soup very hot. So you get a tea cozy, you got a towel or something, and you wrap it around from top and sides. It's all wrapped around in toweling, and the bottom is sitting on the hot plate. So it's hatmona because it's wrapped around, and it's Moshe Hell. There's heat coming from the underneath. That's not allowed. So yeah, so a covering a kettle with a tea cozy and putting you on the hot plate is not allowed for Shabbos because it's hatmona badava Moshe Hell. Now another variation of this is about a kishka of some sort of kugel, where some people would take the kishka material like this, whatever it is, doughy matzamel. The end product is very, very tasty. So I don't know all the ingredients, but they make it this kind of roll, and then they would wrap it in a roll in silver foil and take the whole thing and put it into the cholent. So you got this kugel which is stewing inside the cholent. So some poskim, some rabbanim raised it. It's a problem because the silver foil wrapping is like another little pot. So now you've got your kugel, which is wrapped up, and it's surrounded with cholent, and that's like the insulating material. The cholent is sitting on the stove, and it's therefore it's mosif hevel. So you have here a problem of hatmona bedova hamosif hevel. So there is this problem, as you can see on the screen. Rav Forkash in his Sefer Shabbos Kalocha, volume base. So the first chapter is about hatmona. This is something which contemporaries for him do deal with. To have a food wrapped in silver foil sitting inside the cholent would be a problem. Before going back to our topic, one of the solutions would be if it's not totally submerged in the cholent, it's just sitting on top. That's one solution. Another solution is, say, if you're going to prick a few holes into the silver foil, say it will still hold the shape of the kugel, but it's not, how do you say, isolated from the main food. Okay, let's come back. So this shliach who's asking me about the crock pot in his Chabad house is asking, I've got here a bag of cholent. This bag of cholent is now surrounded with an insulation. That is the ceramic insert. So it's hatmona bedova mosif hevel. All right, perhaps it's all right. So without going into detail, it's open the top. It is open. It isn't open. I want to take the view that just like when it came to Tevilas Kalim, what did we say? That the sheet of greaseproof paper isn't a separate keli. It's just a liner. And therefore the main thing remains the cookie sheet or the cookie tin or the biscuit tin. I'm going to use that has to be tovel. I'm going to use the same svara here to make it lenient. That the liner of the ceramic pot is not a proper keli. It's a liner, and the main thing is that the food is cooking in the ceramic pot, and therefore there's no need to worry about hatmona. It's the cholent is sitting in the ceramic pot. It happens to be a liner, but you're allowed to ignore the line. That's my suggestion. Okay, let's move on. So someone's asking about a mechitza in shul between the men and the ladies' shul, and the origin of the idea of a mechitza, of a separation between men and women. As read in the Mishnah, talks about Simchas Beis HaShe'eva and how there were various stages in this, the Gemara tells us. But then the Tikkun Gadol was that they made like a balcony for women to be upstairs, the men to be downstairs. So we do have this idea of having a mechitza. So if it's on two levels, is much more lenient. If it's on the same level, the question is how opaque does that mechitza need to be? So there is a volume called Toras HaMechitza by a contemporary fine Talmud Chochem by the name of Reb Moshe Chanunu, and he did a whole study about the inyan of mechitza. Some say that it should be so opaque that you can't see a profile of a person through. Others say, so long as it's enough that you don't recognize the person on the other side of the mechitza. And this seems to have been in various places in Europe, etc., that they would have like a trellis kind of mechitza, crisscross wood, and you had little squares where you could see through. And that was used as a mechitza. Was not, the holes are not big enough to recognize who it is, but it's not as if you can't see that there's anyone there on the other side. So this is always the kind of the two sides. In a certain Chabad house situation, it's all similar. We want people who come in to feel part of what's going on. So there's a degree of using the word transparency would be suitable. On the other hand, halacha requires a mechitza, so this is the challenge. So the way I can see that there's so long as you don't recognize the person on the other side of the mechitza, that would be opaque enough to be a kosher mechitza. Certainly some poskim would take that. But hashgacha pratis, I just got in the post, I got a small booklet by Reb Tuvre Gebloizel eingesund. This is number 23, issue number 23 of his memoirs and Werther, etc. And here he published a letter of the Rebbe. Apparently, he quotes that there's just recently been published the guidelines for mechitza according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I have not seen that publication, but meanwhile he copies out this one letter. This letter is addressed to, doesn't say the name. He says a rabbi in the west of England in around 1957. That is from Tovshin Yud Zayin, a rabbi in the west of England. And I'm curious, where is west of England? Which community is this? But meanwhile, let's read the letter. To tell someone that you're not doing the right thing. He's come to this community to tell the people that you're doing the wrong thing, etc. It's korev levadai. It's almost certain that the words of the guest, who hasn't really become a local yet, will not be accepted. To change what has been done by the committee for many years, and actually it will cause greater obstinacy, that they should dig in, not to change, and it will cause hard feelings, difficulties in the relationship, and it will cause also damage to cooperation of inyanim of Torah mitzvahs. So the Rebbe is telling this Rav not to be too pushy. Then the Rebbe writes specifically about the mechitza, that you've written to me that the mechitza is not high enough, that you should join there for prayer, for davening. Absolutely, certainly makes out of the question that you should not. Poshat shemufrach. It is kedai, it is advisable to suggest that you should be present in order to, I'm not sure what he means by lahashgiach al hakovod. Perhaps it means that to be respectful. You come to town, you should be respectful of that community. And the Rebbe hinges this on Yarshulu Lenahel, that should allow you to have to be active, to raise the mechitza adequately. So very, very interesting. Now you've got, I don't know who this Rav is. Did he become the Rav in that community? I actually wrote to the editors if they could be so kind as share with me the details. So I don't know what exactly his position was. Was he perhaps just a chazan? Or I don't know. He comes to a community and the Rebbe is telling him to tread carefully. And then it comes, as far as a lack of mechitza, it couldn't have been a chazan because the Rebbe is telling him not to daven there. But to try to do something where he could to raise it. So how low was the mechitza to the point that Rebbe says poshut, mufrach to daven there? I don't know. I can tell you, going back about 45 years ago, a bit more, about closer to 50 years ago, when Rabbi Aaron Dov Safrin, Olav Shalom, is in Beehive Lane in Ilford, and there was a change at the choir, men's choir. For some reason, instead of being where the choir was till now, the choir took over part of the women's gallery. And he took exception to the fact there's going to be men and women on the gallery, and there was no mechitza. And he would come to shul, and he'd stand there with his kapota. I don't remember whether he wore talis, but that was his protest. He would come to shul and protest that there's not a kosher mechitza. How that was resolved, I don't know. But here's very interesting, and that there are positions where, because the mechitza is inadequate, to say that it's poshut, that one should not be davening there. I'm intrigued to know more details about that story. Let's move on. So here the question is, a Chabad house has been offered a Sephardi Sefer Torah. And this question is it appropriate for us to have this Sephardi Sefer Torah? Now, I asked, is it one of those in the cases? So apparently not. It's just the script is a Sephardi script. Is it appropriate for a Chabad institution, and the shliach is Ashkenazi, would it be appropriate to have a Sephardi Sefer Torah? So we have here on the right of your screen, you have from the Sharet Tshuva on the margin of the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Lamed Vov. That's the chapter in Shulchan Aruch which talks about the formation of the Hebrew letters of the Sefer Torah and the Tefillin. He quotes the Birkei Yosef in the name of Maram Chaviv, who was the author of the Sefer Get Poshut. He says that Tefillin written in Ashkenazi script are different to the way it's for Sfardim, and an Ashkenazi script Tefillin are not valid apostle for Sfardim. And he brings so also from, I think, Rabbi Yosef Molcho, etc. So that's quite a strong position to say that Ashkenazi Tefillin are not valid for a Sfardi. That is, as I say, that's on the margin of the Shulchan Aruch. On the left of your screen, you have from the Sefer called Me'asef L'chol HaMachnos. Me'asef L'chol HaMachnos was written by, I've forgotten his name now, but he was a Gabe of the Minchas Eloza. He was also the one who put together the Darkei Chaim V'Sholem, so he's got like an encyclopedic work on Hilchos Tzitzis and Hilchos Tefillin. That's as far as it went. So he refers to Ein Bebeit Oved. Beis Oved is a Siddur, a Sephardi Siddur printed in Livorno, and he brings the Birkei Yosef, which is quoted in the Sharet Tshuva, and he writes, this is the Beis Oved, he said, B'shas Adchak, if you cannot get Sephardi Tefillin, you can put on Ashkenazi Tefillin, rather than not putting a Tefillin together, but do it without a brach. Then he goes on, in Avol Besifroi, which I'm not familiar what that sefer is, he actually retracts, and he says, he quotes Sefer Shtei Ha'oret, he quotes the Noida B'Yehuda. He says, Masim B'chol Yoim, it's a regular practice. The Ashkenazi in a Sephardi shul has an aliyah, and he says a brocha. And a Sephardi who's an Ashkenazi shul will also have an aliyah make a bracha. And if that's the case, if it's valid to have an aliyah in a Sefer Torah of the other community, so too with the tefillin for Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi tefillin are kosher for a Sephardi. Or Pshita is the same, the opposite. And you should, and contrary to Baram Chaviv and Mari Molcho, it's not an issue. V'yanichem bivracha. So this is in this Sephardi Sefer, based Oived in his later Sefer. So what we're seeing here is that the latest Sephardic poskim, and I'm sure the Ashkenazim will also follow. We see here, Rabbi Yehuda says the same thing. Yes, there are differences with Sephardi Ashkenazi, but they are not substantial to the point to say that it's not kosher for the other one. Having said that they are kosher, but there is a concept of following a minhag avosav, etc. So would it be appropriate to have in a Ashkenazi shul to have a Sephardi Sefer Torah as a second one, as a spare, etc.? I think I'm more okay with that, but it should be on the regular basis that Ashkenazim should be using a Sephardi Sefer Torah or Sephardi Ashkenazi Sefer Torah. I think they should be keeping to their minhag avosav and keep to that Sefer Torah of their following. Let's move on. So someone's asking me about, if you have a square corner of your kapota, etc., that raises a question that you might have to have tzitzis. So just to address this briefly, if the bottom corners of your kapota are square, so that counts as two corners, the two front parts. If the back of the kapota, or raincoat for that matter, is more than halfway down, split open, so then if those corners at the back of the kapota or raincoat are also square, then you'd need to have tzitzis. In order to avoid this issue, the kapota tailors will make a corner. They'll make a corner rounded. So therefore, it's not four corners; it's only three corners. The question is how do you measure this corner? How round does it have to be? How close to or how far from the extreme corner does it start to begin to curve? So Reb Chaim Noer writes, you should work out the following. Take a piece of paper which is 12 centimeters diameter, and you put that on the corner, and you make it that the edges are at the edge of the garment, and if the square corner is sticking out beyond the circle, that part should be cut off. And then if it's rounded that off that way, that would now be called a rounded corner, because it's got to do with that the smallest garment is 3 by 3 etzbois, and etzba being 2 centimeters, so 6 by 6 is the smallest, what's called a corner. So if from the beginning of the 6 by 6 it already begins to curve, that's already called a rounded corner, and it doesn't need to have tzitzis. Now, very helpful is that I actually measured. You can see I've got in my hands a regular CD. I found it in one of my antique collections. It's actually I measured it. It's 12 centimeters across, the diameter. So if you would put this on the corner of the garment, and the corner is rounded from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, that's rounded, then your corner is rounded, and it doesn't need to have tzitzis. That will solve the problem for the entire kapota. Yeah, if out of the 4 corners, one of them is rounded, then the garment doesn't need to have tzitzis. Okay, let's move on. So now I got this question from a shlucha in a town in Europe, a rather large city, and she says that she's started walking her 17-month-old toddler to shul on Shabbos. They're on shlichus, and she sees it's important for her shlichus to be in shul as possible, if possible. And she's not keen to have a goy pushing a buggy for her. She's not interested in doing that. Probably the wisdom being that if she can do that, then other people will push the buggy themselves. Because but now that the kid is able to walk, so she's walking. It turns out, however, that the kid gets cranky somewhere along the way, and it looks like the child is possibly thirsty. The child will be able to have a drink, and that would solve the problem. So she's asking me the question, could she prepare a backpack with a bottle of water, some crackers, put it on the child's back, and walk the child with the backpack to shul? And then when the child gets a bit tired, well, I will stop. I'll take the bottle out of the backpack and have a drink, and then they'll go on to shul, etc. That was her question. Now, there is a very big difference between not interfering with what a child does and giving the child to do something which is forbidden. In many areas we say if a child is doing something against Torah in Lova Mitzvah, you're allowed to ignore it. But but to give the child, we're just learning yesterday, we were learning in Shulchan Aruch, are you allowed to give a child matzah on Erev Pesach? When we're not meant to be eating matzah on Erev Pesach. Certainly not allowed to give a child treif. So giving the child a backpack is like giving them something which is for them to do malacha with, to carry it. Now, if it was a small town where you don't have 600,000 people, then you could say that carrying the street there is a drabonon, and then you could take a lenient view. So let's read this inside. This is from the Siman in Shulchan Aruch about chinuch, and it calls Shabbos as Shimon Shimim Gimel. So there are those who say that if it's a drabonon, you're allowed to feed the child an isur drabonon. The Shulchan Aruch disagrees with that. He says you're not allowed to feed a child isur drabonon is also not allowed. He then quotes Rabbi Kiva Eiger, a case where there's no Eruv. Are you allowed to have children carry Sforim for you to shul? Can you rely on the Rashba that an isur drabonon can be given to a child? So he says no. Well, first of all, the assumption here is for sure that the carrying is in a rabbanon because it's not shishim riboy, etc. Can you give a child to carry the sefer? You want a sefer in a shul? Can you give the child to carry the sefer for you? So he says no, because the Ran says even the Rashba, who says you can give the child an isur rabbanon, that's only for the child's benefit, but not for your own benefit. And the contrary, you'd have to tell them no, don't carry it for me. And then Rabbi Kiva Eiger says, if you give the child a siddur or chumash for the child to use, and then you'll be also following inside along with the child, that would be okay. But meanwhile, what we're seeing here is this is clearly only a heter for an isur drabonon. And for the benefit, if it were isur drabonon, you'd be allowed to give the child a backpack. If we're talking about a bigger city where I'm concerned there's a shesarabim deraisa, then I'm concerned about giving this to a child because you're as if you're feeding them isur. I want to just clarify something. And what I've seen in poskim is that for example, the Chidushi Harim, the Ger Rebbe, yeah? So he has a tshuva. He says about a child carrying on Shabbos in the street. He says a child doesn't have machshava, and integral to a malach on Shabbos is the machshava, to bring it from A to B. But a child doesn't have machshava, and therefore he's not doing a malacha altogether. And there are other poskim who find other loopholes to allow a child to carry. And living in Stamford Hill, I do often see little toddlers going along with holding a baby's bottle or a pacifier dummy or whatever, packet of crisps, and the parent. Now, but that's not such a problem if the child took it on their own accord. Here we're talking about giving it to the child. What my hunch about this is that in Poland, it was generally there were Eruvin in the cities. And the question was on the odd occasion, when there's no Eruv, can you give the child to carry? Possibly in the Lita, etc. I'm guessing. I don't hear about them having Eruvin so instituted on all over. So when there's no Eruv, then giving a child is not just this week, it's a week after week after week. And possibly because of this, we see a stricter position. Okay. So really, I told her that I'm not very keen about this. And so we'll find another way of persevering. She asked if the child is just near the shul and doesn't want to go in, can you ask the security guard to carry the child in? So I says that's okay. Yeah. If you're stuck with a child on the street when they want a guy to help you, that's okay. Let's do our last question for today, and that is someone is publishing a new edition of a Siddur in another country, different language. Of course, the Hebrew is Hebrew, but the translation is another language. And he's asking me, it's a Chabad Siddur, and he sees on the words in Hadaras Ve'emunah, Hasigui v'Hasegev. So in some Chabad Siddurim, Hasegev is spelled with a sin, and some it's spelled with a samach. So yeah, so what you have on the screen, this is from the first print of the Alter Rebbe Siddur in Tovkuf Samach Gimel. That's 221 years ago. And here he has Anoiva Netzach L'chayo Lomim, Hasigui v'Hasegev L'chayo Lomim. And here you have the Segev is with a Samach. Now, the truth is that there's no such word in Hebrew called Segev with a Samach. It is the word Nisgov, etc. Sogva mimenu, that is a exalted, a high up, and that is written with a sin. The Shoresh is Sian Gimel Vase. What we do find is that often there's an interchange between the sin and the samach. So what's happened here is in the Hadaras Ve'emunah is in alphabetical order, and so Hasigui v'Hasegev is the letter samach. And therefore, the word Segev, although in correct Hebrew, it should be written with a sin, but it's written with a samach because that's how it fits there, to fit the alphabetical sequence. And then comes another printer and says, no, but the real word is Segev with a sin. So he puts it as sin. So my feeling was that a siddur is made for simple people. And it also should be for simple people. And then looking at the simple person, looks at the Hadaras he sees a sequence of alphabets. He comes along to Hasegev and he says, what's the sin doing over here? Oh, you're going to say, well, really sin is pronounced as Samach, and really, and it's put here because it's instead of the sin. That kind of pilpul, I think, is beyond what you should expect from the simple reader. And therefore, the simple reader put a sin. And for the ones who are more sophisticated, you'll know that the word is really the sin. And of course, for the reason of the alphabetical sequence, it's been put as a Samach. Now, someone pointed out, I mentioned this for Friday night, someone mentioned about what about in Keil Oren? We have Smeichim B'Tseisam, B'Sosim Voyim, Oisim Be'emer Etzayin Koino. So why is Smeichim there with a sin? Why is it not with a Samach? Okay, my simple answer is to put Smeichim with a Samach, you'd never get away with it. The word Hasegev is not such a common word, and therefore it's put in with the samach, which to fit the sequence. Both of them are valid positions, but the question is what's advisable, how to publish in the Siddur. I was more inclined to put it with the samach, and I was pleased to see that's how it was in the first prints of the Alter Rebbe Siddur. As you can see, what you have on the screen, this is from the forthcoming edition of the Alter Rebbe Siddur with Mekoris Tziyoni v'Ha'oris, Habo Aleinu L'Toivo B'Korev, and so you can see here that this comment. That's what I have for tonight. I want to wish you all a very good evening, and we're going into Rosh Chodesh. Should be a Chodesh HaGeula, Protis for the hostages, and a Geula Klolos for Klal Yisrael, and with Mashiach Tzidkenu. As I mentioned at the beginning of this year, we're making Chasna Bez Hashem on Wednesday evening, and as a result, I won't be able to do the share next Sunday, neither Thursday evening nor Sunday evening, and so Bez Hashem, once we get back into things, you'll be duly notified, and I look forward to sharing with you further in Yonim. And meanwhile, I really wish you a kosher and Freilich and Pesach.
Thank you, and Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
Warm Mazel Tov. Thank you.
Mazel Tov.